Timer can have 6 minutes.
Sorry?
6 minutes, can I have a sign from you?
What kind of sign? Just like this? Just okay. Yeah, we can do that.
More than 200 years ago, the Netherlands is founded, as we know. And the royal destiny started. More than 200 years ago, our country started, and since that time we had all kinds of ups and downs. In 1831, Belgium became independent. The Second World War. Mark Rutte is now ready for a position in NATO or Europe. And we have 15 or more parties in the parliament. And with the upcoming elections, what do we expect? Negotiations again for a year before we have a new government with perhaps 20 political parties. You have to examine what is our country in the world. A political bandwidth is given by the global political bandwidth what they give us. Our economical possibilities, we don't make our own decisions, it's all decided by global economics. Perhaps you have to think about something else. Not the Netherlands we know, perhaps you have to think about a totally new way of thinking. We come from part of Germany. I'd like to investigate with you what kind of possibilities there are, what are the pros and cons, if the Netherlands becomes a part of Germany. And I'd like to have three aspects. Cultural part, political part, and economical part. Let's start with the cultural part. According to the Webster Dictionary, the Dutch language is a dialect of the German language. Yes, and German comes from the Dutch Dietz language, and it means the language of the common people. Latin was the language of the religion, or in science. And do we have real cultural differences between Germany or Netherlands? If you look at the Netherlands itself, we have a part above the rivers and below the rivers. Already cultural differences. The same like northern Germany and southern part of Germany. So every country or federal state will have its own culture. That won't change. So we can keep our kings there. I don't see any problem with our cultural differences, because imagine we live here in the Netherlands, Germans come here on vacation and we go on vacation to Germany. Cultural exchange is already existing. Let's look at the economic aspect. Germany is the political engine in Europe. And the Netherlands is totally dependent on Germany. And do you know, we are the second country for import for Germany. And Germany is the second country for the Netherlands for the import of the products for Germany. So, our whole economy is already intertwined. We are just all one economy. Now, the Netherlands in the global economy doesn't have any value. They're just part of it, but we're not part of the G20. If we become a part of Germany, we put part of Germany of the G20. So we have more power on the global aspect. Let's look at the political part. Most people think if you get a management training, they have to read all those English management books from the United States. Everything in English. But do you realize our real political model fits more with the German way, the Rhineland model, instead of the Anglo-Saxon model, what you read in all those American books. The Rhineland model is more based on that you politically influence, that's your education, let's say urbanization, environment, social issues. Anglo-Saxon model is work for the marketplace. Don't interfere in those kind of topics. And we in Europe, in the Netherlands and Germany, are more for this Rhineland model, where we think on the long-term strategy, we think about continuity, than about Anglo-Saxon model, we only think about short-term profit. So, we, culturally seen, and even politically seen, we are just already almost the same. I've made a small recapitulation of what I read. Because Germany and the Netherlands are economically almost the same. Germany is the engine, we have more economic growth. More economic growth means more jobs. Maintain our identity, of course. Our cultural differences will not change. King's Day, important for us, we don't have to let it go. And of course, the Dutch and Frisian language can still exist. You have so many dialects in Germany, our dialects and English stay the same. And if we become a federal state of Germany, we have more power on the world global forum. And we can participate in the German legislation. And remember, the Netherlands is dependent on the German economy. And the Netherlands follows the German economy in a lot of things. Now, the Netherlands is dependent on the German economy itself. Some people say, if you give up your independence, what kind of future do you have? But do you realize our future is already decided by the global economy and political situation? So my benefit is, if we would be part of Germany, we have more to say in the world. We have more political power in the world and more economical power in the world. And by the way, our national hymn doesn't have to be changed. If you look at the first sentence, Wilhelmus von Nassau, ben ik van Duitse bloed, translated, Wilhelmus of Nassau, I'm of German origin. So, I have a call for you. I see a new future for the Netherlands. And I want to call you up to help me to achieve this goal, to make the Netherlands a part of Germany. I can understand it's a totally new subject for you, and that perhaps you haven't thought about it, but you have some questions, and I'm very pleased to answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you for such a great topic and a lot of food for thought. I noticed it's very much economic and political driven, your story. How do you look at, because I really believe in this concept of gross national happiness. How do you look at the well-being and happiness of people?
What I know is happiness depends on, let's say, the social grounds, let's say, the social environment in a country. That's important. Every federal state in Germany has its own, let's say, laws to protect the people. That's important. People must feel protected, safety. And I think, from my opinion, let's say, you can measure the safety in a country how people are taken care of by the government. That's important. And happiness has two ways. That you are happy in your way how you can behave, you have the freedom to behave, and you have the safety, you can make the decisions you want. And I'm convinced in a, let's say, federal state in the Netherlands as part of Germany, we have the possibility to make our own changes. I'm seeing now possibility what happens in the Netherlands now with the polarization, that we perhaps don't dare to make a choice anymore. In polarization, people are afraid to make a choice. And the bigger the country is, the less polarization there is.
Interesting.
Thank you for the question. So,
yeah, but I don't know if I have to ask you a question whether this was a serious proposal or not. But indeed, the first thing that strikes me is you talk a lot about the political advantages. However, I noticed that you didn't quite talk about the history behind this and why this would be, at first, a shocking idea for most people because of the liberation from German occupation.
I totally agree with that thought, what you have. We cannot neglect it. We cannot ignore it. So we have, of course, a history in, let's say, you already go back to 1870 with the French-German War. Yes, and 1940, what Netherlands didn't participate in. And all the wounds, what it has created in the people, what is involved in that. But I believe, if you want to have a safe environment, social environment, sometimes you have to look forward. I do believe that, let's say, any country in the world could have achieved the same things what happened in 1932. It has to do with power, how people, what kind of people have power. But we have to look forward. Forward looking in the way of how is the world developing. We already gave up, let's say, the feeling of that we have to punish the Germans for what they did. In the 60s, we already gave up that feeling of the Germans were our occupiers. And my biggest symbol is that Mitterrand, the French president, and Helmut Schmidt were together on Memorial Day and stood hand in hand, remembering what happened in the Second World War. So we have to stop looking backwards and look forward, and take the examples of Mitterrand and Helmut Schmidt.
Okay.
Bruce.
Yeah, I agree with you very nicely. Economics are very important because if everybody is, in clover, then everybody's more happy. So with your radical idea, what are you going to do with Belgium?
No, that is a very good point. Let's say, I had you already interview with Bart de Lever in the newspaper last weekend, and he said we have to divide Belgium in a northern part and the southern part. That is, we as the Dutch people cannot make a decision about it. I think it's perhaps Stefan, he's not here this evening, could have an answer on that.
Yeah.
But and they said the northern part will become a part of the Netherlands and the southern part will become a part of France. But that is okay. That is, I don't want to bring that up at this moment because that is, I'm going up beyond the borders. That's, yeah. Thank you for the question. Your first.
So my name is Tufa. So that's because I'm here for the first time. My question is, you clearly articulated the advantages for the Netherlands. What are the potential advantages for the Germans if the Netherlands will be partnered with Germany? Because I see it as a relationship. So I might love you and see what you can offer me. So what can I offer you?
There are, of course, economic benefits too. The Netherlands is a very important country. Rotterdam is the harbor for all the goods that will be transported to Germany. So Germany would have a harbor at the North Sea. That's one of the economic benefits. The second benefit, of course, Dutch, let's say, be polite in this, to say, Dutch way of thinking. We are very direct, Germans are not very direct, and it can help them to develop their own way of thinking. So we can help them to, as person, to make the way of thinking more easy, helping them in our direct way and pleasant way, of course, to make decisions. And that is one of the benefits we can bring to Germany. I mentioned too, the harbor and then our way of thinking.
Yes, you mentioned in your speech that we don't really have to change if we become part of Germany. But may I suggest that we take two changes? The first, the glasses in which we serve beer, they are ridiculous. If you look in Germany, they know how to serve it. So that would be my first suggestion. My second suggestion would be, in certain parts of Germany you don't have a speed limit on the highway. I would really love to also incorporate that in our country. So maybe, I don't know what your view is on that, but I think
it's a very great point what you bring, because I think for our whole program to bring the Netherlands into Germany, we have to find some points what is important for us. And I really like your ideas to write down and say, okay, let's have a discussion about it. And we can involve Heineken in this too, especially for the beer.
Or we can get rid of Heineken.
That's something else. Victor.
I like the idea and I see a lot of benefits in this. But my question would be, wouldn't that also make sense with different countries? For example, Denmark, I guess, also has a lot of similar history with Germany. And I guess the countries could still have their local autonomy and local laws and rules. So wouldn't it be also possible to do this with different countries like France or Poland? And what would you think about the idea of doing this with more countries? And the last part of this is, wouldn't also it make sense to, after that connection, change the name of Germany into European Republic or something like that? What would you think about the idea like this?
I understand where you want to go to, where you're heading to. Let's say to one big Europe. It's possible, but it takes more time. If we can, let's say, I see it as a pilot. If the Netherlands could join with Germany, and we can overcome all the problems we have, let's say, that can be a role model for other countries to do the same, or participate in this. You mustn't start immediately with all other countries at the same time, because you know it comes to fail. You have to start step by step, and if the Netherlands is the leading role, take the leading role in this, great. And people can learn from it, we can learn from it, and then perhaps Poland can participate too. Thank you, Victor. Ina.
If this were to actually happen, what's going to be the case with sports then? Is there just going to be no Netherlands national team anymore? Then they're just going to be Germany? No, or...
If I take UK as an example, they have a national sports club in Scotland, Wales, and UK, England, England. Yes. So we can organize something like that too. Of course, the Netherlands can be a kind of federal state, but can have its own national team. Why not? And then is the federal state of the Netherlands against the federal state of another part of Germany. As a football match. That'd be great. But we have to think about it. I think there's a good part where we have to write it down and examine it. It's a part of the negotiation. Thank you. Bruce. Sorry, Hendrik Jan first.
I was just wondering about Germany is much bigger than the Netherlands. How are we sure that we are not just finally becoming Germanized if we do this?
Aren't we already Germanized? Our language is almost similar as the German language. That we got, that's all the exceptions in the what I call it, the Naumwelle, got rid of it in the late 19th century. It was part of our country, our language. Even our development in the country, the language is the same. And if you look to take the language in the southern part of Germany, it's totally different than the northern part of Germany. So, Germanizing, if you say is German, okay, that's it too, but I can say it's Bavarian or Essen, or it's Pomeranian. Each have its own way of thinking, its own culture, and its own language, its own dialect. So the Netherlands is not a language, the Netherlands is a dialect.
Yeah.
Bruce, last one.
Yes, I'll go into so basically, unification of Germany was in 1870. I had a good friend who was from one of the Baltic states in Europe and said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was based upon economic differences, because once there was economic differences in the 1980s, then the Soviet Union was all but doomed, because there was going to be those, because nationalist rivalries were going to force the thing. With Germany actually going into recession at this moment in time, would you not say that your whole idea was actually doomed to stop?
It's, let's say it this way, Germany has a kind of, the economy is growing slower than the Netherlands. We are officially in a recession too, at this moment in the Netherlands. We have 2 quarters negative our index is going down. So, in a recession too. But that's temporary. Our economy is growing. The world economy is growing and we participate in it. So, that the dip we have in Europe, okay, It makes it more equal. So I don't see it as a real problem. What can be a problem? If the economic differences become bigger and bigger, then you get in conflict. But if you work together, with the same responsibility, then the conflict is almost gone. And 1872, 1940, 1942, 1939, it always to do with economic conflicts. Other questions? Last one.
Hi, good evening. My name is Barry. I'm here
Hello, Barry.
The question that popped up is, would it be legally possible to become a federal state? Are there no constraints?
I think we must change the constitution. Yes, that's right. Okay, but it is, if the people want it, it will happen. And a legal document is nothing else than a piece of paper we all agreed on. So the words on the paper can be changed. I see my time is gone. Thank you all for your questions, for your participation, and see you next time. Thank you.